Okay, let's get started. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Yo antah pravishya mama vacha imam prashuptam sanjeevayati akhila shakti darasvadamnam anyamshcha hastacharana shravanatvagadin pranan namo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam lasatu shrimadananda tirtendurno hrudambare yadvachaschandrika swanta santapam vinikrantati पदवाक्य प्रमाण ज्ञान प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथा भूतं विष्णु तत्व विनिर्णयम्. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 29th session of Kata Upanishad. And we have been doing the Kata Upanishad contemplation for about a year now. And as you know, Kata Upanishad and Bhagavad Gita, they go hand in hand, and ideally we should be studying both at the same time, and which is what we have been doing for the past year with Bhagavad Gita chapters and Kataka Upanishad. So let's directly dig into the verses that we have done. So what have we been doing for the past couple of weeks? Puram Ekadasha Dwaram Ajasya Avakrachecha Saha Anushtaya न सोचति विमुक्तश्च विमुच्यते एतद्वै सत् हंसस्सुचिषत् वसु अन्तरिक्षसत् होता वेदिषत् अतिथिर्दुरोनशत् दृशत् वरशत् ऋतशत् अब्जा गोजा ऋतजा अद्रिजा ऋतं बृहत् ऊर्ध्वं प्राणम् उन्नयति अपानं प्रत्यगस्यति मध्ये वामनमासीनं विश्वे देवाः उपासते अस्य विस्रंसमानस्य शरीरस्तस्य देहिनः देहात् विमुच्यमानस्य किमत्र परिशिष्यते एतद्वै तत् न प्राणेन न अपानेन मर्त्योः जीवति कश्चन इतरेण तु जीवन्ति यस्मिन् Neta Upashritau. So these are some of the verses that we have done over the last month or so. So the key verse there was the Hamsa Gayatri, and we spent a good 3 sessions talking about this mantra, right? Hamsas Suchishat Vasu Antarikshasat Hota Vedishat Atitir Dronashat Nrishat Varashat Rutashad Vyomashad Abja Goja Ritaja Adrija Ritam Brihat. So this is a key Hamsa Gayatri of Kata Upanishad. So let's just summarize what we have learned so far. So we understood that Supreme Being is inside our body, which has 11 gates. Compare it with Gita, which says 9 gates. And we have discussed this on a number of occasions as to why Kata Rishi in this Upanishad, which is part of the Krishna Yajur Veda, talks about 11 gates. And then the Hamsa Gayatri also tells us that he is inside all of his creation. And he is inside the highest to the lowest of the jivas. And then he says, our very existence is due to the cosmic antaryaman, is due to the cosmic sutram, and inside him is this antaryaman. And that was the key verses of 3, 4, and 5. So these are all some of the verses. So what we've got next to do is a few more verses, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So you may remember when we were doing Kata Upanishad, 2nd Adhyaya, 1st Valli, we have done these verses, 6, 7, and 8. So go back to those sessions and have a look at those verses. So today we are going to be looking at these 3 verses, and I hope I'll be able to finish it in about an hour's time. So what are these 3 verses? So they are talking about, the previous verses, the Kata Rishi has told us about how the Supreme Being is inside all his creation, and he is inside all the jivas as an antaryaman. So next question is, if he is inside me as my antaryaman, what is the dynamics of this interaction between the jiva and its antaryaman? How can we comprehend this being who's beyond our material perception? So we all know that we can't see him with your material eyes and so on. But if that is the situation, how do we comprehend him? We have come to this samsara, we are in this material world. What kind of upasanas, what kind of instruments that we have to use to try and understand the Supreme? So those are some of the key ideas that we are going to get in this particular 3 verses. Yeah. So let me just take you through these beautiful verses. So before I go to this, okay, so this is a very, very important concept. What is the Vedic philosophy of worship? What is the Vedic philosophy of symbols? We use a lot of symbols, right? In our Sanatana Dharma, we use a lot of symbols for our worship. We all understand that the Supreme Being is beyond material. He is beyond matter. But still, we seem to be using things that are material to try and understand or grasp him. Okay. So this is a key aspect, and I just want to spend a few minutes actually exploring this idea within the Vedic philosophy. Okay. So I put a very provocative statement here, and let's get this, let's have a discussion for a couple of minutes before moving on to what does our Guru, who is our primary Guru for Vedanta Darshana? It is Veda Vyasa, Krishna Dvaipayana. He is our Guru, and then we'll have to say what is his view on this and then make progress. Okay. So I'm going to make a statement. Okay. Before symbols of Vedic philosophy, the basics. And I think we need to think about this a lot. The temptation to identify pratika or symbol of worship with the Supreme should be most carefully and diligently avoided. So that's a provocative statement here. Do we agree with this view or not? Temptation to identify symbols of worship with the Supreme himself. Should we be careful and diligently avoid such an approach? So what is the view here? So can I have one or two contribute to this view before we make further progress here, please? So what is our view? I'm looking for two poles views, two extreme views here. Any takers? Anybody wants to contribute here?
Namaskar, Message. I feel you should, we have to identify, but we should not think that the Lord is there fully in him. Like, the paripurna is not there, but a part, so that we can meditate on him. Till then, we should use it.
Okay, thank you, Pratibhaji. Anybody else has got another view here? So somebody is saying something? Okay, so Pratibhaji is saying that, yeah, Pragnesh, go for it.
In chapter 12 of Bhagavad Gita, when Lord Krishna is showing the Vishwarup Darshan, there was a question, should we worship this form or that form? And then Arjuna requests to go back to the normal form, and then he says that depending on what you want, you can either worship my unmanifested or manifested form.
Okay, Pragnesh, very good. So that is what Krishna has said and informed all of us in Bhagavad Gita. Wonderful. But my question is slightly different. So, for example, today evening after the satsang, you are going to go to, say, local Hindu temple. Okay. And then there is a vigraha there. Okay. And then there is a purohit who's doing some aarti and so on. So when you go to the temple and when you look at that symbol, so that, I don't want to use the word idol, which is a very derogatory word. I'm going to say that that deity or that symbol that is there in the temple, how do you approach it, Pragnesh? So that is what we are thinking about. Yes, Krishna has said that, Arjuna has said, I want to see you in this most beautiful form of Krishna. Yes, but that Krishna also is not a material form, is it? It is completely a transempirical form that Gita is talking about. But for us, this is for a practical application. When we go to the temple, how would you do that, Pragnesh? How do you approach this?
I go to my fundamental learning that when I was a kid, I needed a pen and pencil to write some things. Now I can even imagine in the air that I can write 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, D. So I think as a step towards progress, I think it is important to have some idols and some forms. That is what my understanding is.
Yeah, thank you, Pragnesh. So yeah, lots of diverse views here. So let's think about what Veda Vyasa, Krishna Dvaipayana has to say about this. So in the 4th Adhyaya of the Brahma Sutra, which we also know is called Vedanta Sutra, there is a very, very important sutra that he has composed, na pratike nahi saha. Okay, so this is what Veda Vyasa is saying. What Veda Vyasa is telling us is na pratike nahi saha. He's saying, look at that statue or whatever that is there. Look at that and try and contemplate that Brahman who is pervaded that particular symbol, but not that thing that is made of matter itself as Brahman. Yeah, na pratikaha nahi saha. So at least the Veda Vyasa's view there is that we should try and avoid the temptation of identifying a material thing with the Supreme. Okay, hold on to that thought. We might have a diverse view on this. So hopefully, Kata Rishi and Yama in the Kata Upanishad will be able to give us an idea as to what is it that Yama is teaching Nachiketa in the Kata Upanishad, in the Krishna Yajur, because that is what we are doing here. So before I do that, I just want to remind you, we have just done this verse, isn't it, in Kata Upanishad. Na pranena, na apanena, martyoho jivati kashtana. So he says, you are not alive just because the prana and the apana vayu. Itarena tu jivanti. You are alive because of this itara, that something that is different. Itara is something that is totally different. So that is what Kata is said. You are alive because of this itara. Look at the 15th chapter, 16 to 17, and we have recited this, of course, so many times. Dva imau purusho loke kshara akshara evacha kshara sarvani bhutani kutasto akshara uchyate uttamaha purushastu anyaha paramatma iti udahritaha. So look at that. Even Vyasa, who is the composer of Bhagavad Gita, and what Krishna is telling to Arjuna, Uttamaha Purushastu Anyaha. Again, he has said Anyaha. So in Kata Upanishad, he says Itarena, and in Gita, he says Anyaha. Anyaha, Itara means they're all synonymous, different. Something that is different to the jivas and something that is different to the matters or the material, Jada Tattva. So here is another very important statement from Shvetashvatara Upanishad. What the Shvetashvatara Upanishad is telling us is, hang on, bear with me, there is an internet issue here. Okay. So what Shvetashvatara Upanishad is telling here is that there are two entities. One is Jada, that is Agnya, and then there is another entity called Nya. So Nya, Agnyau, Anishau. Okay, that they are dependent things is what Shvetashvatara Upanishad says as Nya, Agnyau, Anishau, Kshara, Atmanau, Ishate, Deva, Ekaha. Okay, so that is a clear statement from Shvetashvatara Upanishad which says that this Kshara and the Jivas, they are under the control of this Brahman who is entirely different from these two. So I just want you to think about that concept of, the Brahman or the Supreme who is an entirely different category in his own right. He is unique. There is nobody similar to him. There is nobody above him or nobody who is equal to him, and he is entirely unique. Okay, so this is what Yama is going to be telling us in the subsequent verses. Okay, so if you hold on to that idea, the concept of Itara, the concept of Anyaha, and the concept that this Deva Ekaha, who is Ishate for these two, then we might be able to think about this problem. Then how to worship the unseeable with whatever we have at our disposal in this material world, which is what Pragnesh was talking to us about. So Pragnesh, our Guru Yama in Kata Upanishad has actually given us a formula. And this is a formula that is discovered by the Vedic Rishis as to how do we contemplate this problem. So if you remember in the Hamsa Gayatri, we looked at these three aspects, isn't it? Hamsaha, Antarikshaha, and Vedi. And we said Hamsa, of course, means Hamsa Namaka Paramatma. God as Hamsa Namaka Paramatma. And then in Taittiriya Aranyaka, we also understood this Hamsa is also denotes the sun, the Surya. Antariksha, of course, is Akasha. Vedi is where the Vedic sacrifice happens, which is the Prithvi. So here is your clue where Yama is actually giving us a clue. So on earth, what is the most important symbol for worship? In the atmosphere, what is the most important symbol to worship, and beyond the atmosphere in the heavens, what is the most important symbol of this Paramatma or Brahman or Krishna or Vishnu or whatever you want to call him as, what is the most important symbol? So Prithvi, Akasha and Dyau, Bhu, Bhuvaha and Suvaha, earth, atmosphere and the sun. So our Vedic Rishis have given us this simple formula, because when we get out of our bed and when we go out to work, this is what we see. We are on earth. We are breathing air in the atmosphere and we look up and we see the sun. So the Rishis have given us a simple formula of how to contemplate this supreme being in these three things that happens to us in every day of our life. So this is what Yama does by expanding further in the following mantras for our contemplation. So there is a typo here. I really don't know what's happened, that this image is not come up here. So apologies for that. So what I had here was Vedi, I had a Vedic sacrifice. And in Antariksha, I had the wind that was blowing. And in the Hamsa, I had the Surya. Okay. So these are, from the Yama's perspective, these are the pratikas of the Supreme in the material universe. And let's look at the very first verse. Okay. So remember, when you get out in the morning, tomorrow, Monday morning, you go out to work. You're standing on earth. So there is your contemplation of Brahman. You're breathing the air. There is your contemplation of Brahman. You're looking up at the sky. There is the contemplation of your Brahman. Okay. So this is what Yama is telling here. Agnir ata yekaha bhuvanam pravishtaha rupam pratirupo babuvaha yekastata sarva bhuta antara atma rupam prati rupo bahishta. So very, very beautiful verses, but fairly straightforward for us to understand. So Agni. So we know what Agni is. Agni is fire. So on earth, Agni from a Vedic Rishi's perspective, Agni is the most important symbol for contemplation. Everything else comes after that. But primarily, it is the fire. It is the Agni, which is the supreme symbol for Vedic Rishis for contemplation of the Supreme. Okay. So then only comes those symbols made of stone, metal, and wood and other solid states. Okay, so we know this evolution of matter, isn't it? Where you have sattva, rajas, tamas, mahat, ahankara, tamasa, ahankara, pancha tanmatra, pancha bhuta, then akasha, vayu, tejas, aap, and prithvi. Tejas is the Agni. Prithvi is the solid state, which could be the symbols of the Supreme in the form of a stone, in the form of a metal, in the form of a wood, or whatever other solid state that you like. Okay. Our Rishis now take up this Agni, and as I told you, from a Vedic perspective, fire is the most important symbol. So the Yama takes this as an example and says, look, Agnihi ata ekaha. So Agni ata ekaha means what? Agni means who? Not just the material Agni, but the Agni Devata or Pradana Agni, who, as you know, from a Vedic rank perspective, is 15th rank in the Vedic pantheon. So that is the Pradana Agni. Okay. So the Yama says, Agnir ata ekaha. This Pradana Agni, the Agni Devata is only one. Okay. But there are various types of material Agnis, right? You have Agni of the sacrifice, Agni for Deepavali Deepas, Agni of candle, Agni in the kitchen, Agni in a house that is under fire, Agni in your barbecues, and the fire in the forest fire. They are all different forms of material Agni. But in all these material forms, there is only one Agni Devata. Pradana Agni is only one. So what he does, that is what Yama is giving us a metaphor to understand this concept. He says, just like how there are various forms of material Agni, but there is only one Agni Devata who is inside these material Agnis. So, Rupam Prati, that is, for every form of the material Agni, Rupo Babuvaha. This Pradhana Agni is inside these various types of Agni and ensures that they are doing, that they perform their jobs. And of course, inside the Pradhana Agni is the Antaryamin. Yeah, that is what he's going to come in the next line. So we need to take this metaphor in that spirit. Agnir ata eko bhuvanam pravishtaha rupam prati rupo babuvaha. Okay. Similarly, so let's look at this Agni a little bit more. Always worth revising this Agni. And we have understood that Agni is the most important symbol of Pratika of Brahman or Krishna or Vishnu or whatever you want to call on land. Okay. And we have said it is not just the material Agni that is being discussed. It is not just Pradhana Agni or Kala Agni Rudra or Prana Agni or Chaturmukha or Kala Agni Durga, but it is Agni Narayana that is primarily the Agni that is celebrated in the Agni Sukta of Rig Veda, which as you know is the very first mantra of Rig Veda. Agni Mile Purohitam Yajnasya Devam Rutvijam Hotaram Ratnadatamam. So that Agni is the very first word of mankind. Yeah. So that very first word of mankind is telling us that the meaning Agni there is entirely different. And what is that meaning of Agni? And we have done this etymology of Agni from Rigbhashyam. Agni Shabdo Ayam Agni Reva Abhipujyatam Agrayatvam Agranetrutvam Attim Anga Netrutam. So that is the etymology of Agni, not this material Agni that we throw stuff into. No, Agre Niyate, the first to be adored. Who is the first to be adored? The Supreme Being himself. He is the most important to be adored. Agrayatvat, the first and the foremost of all. Before creation, who was there? That Supreme Being was there. Agre Nayati, he is the prime mover of all. Attim, he is the devourer of all. So he is called Agni. Angam Nayati, he is the activator of the bodies of all. Agam Nayati, activator of all, or else they will remain inert. So these are all the ideas of the Agni that is being discussed in the Agni Mile Purohitam, the very first Agni Sukta of the Rig Veda. It is 100% not a description of material Agni. It is 100% not a description of the Agni Devata. It is a prime celebration of Agni Narayana, who is all pervasive in all his creation, which is what we have done in Taittiriya Upanishad, isn't it? So, akamayat bahusyam prajayeya iti satapo atapyata satapastaptva idam sarvam asrujata yadidam kincha tat srishtva tadeva anupravishata. The most important verse of Vedic scriptures is this particular verse of Taittiriya Upanishad, where he says, the Supreme said, let me create. And with that thought, creation happened. And he created a lot of stuff. But what did he do? In his creation, he anupravishata, he pervaded all his creation. So that is the approach there as to how you look at Agni. So when you look at that, the second verse, the second two lines of this verse then becomes very interesting. So what did we do here? Agnir ata ekaha bhuvanam pravishtaha rupam prati rupo babuvaha ekas tata sarva bhuta antara atma rupam prati rupo bahishta. So that is how you read this. So it says, similarly as how I've given you that example of Pradhana Agni is one, but he is in various forms of material Agnis. Similarly, Ekas Tata Sarva Bhuta Antara Atma. So Eka, look at this in this word Eka here in this three sets of mantras from Kata Upanishad. They become very, very, very important. This word Eka comes 5 times in these 3 verses. And Kata Rishi of Krishna Yajur has seen this. Yeah. And they are there for a reason. Eka is there for a reason. Why? Eka has several meanings in Vedic language. One, Eka means one. Yeah, we know. There is only one Krishna. Okay. There is only one Brahman. There is nobody. You can say there is another Krishna around. There is only one Krishna. There is only one Krishna who is there. And that is one meaning of...
Aniket, it's not 15 chapters.
Okay, so there are... Sorry, I'm going to request people to mute their audio, please. Sorry, yes. So, Eka. So, Eka, where were we? One is one. The second one means Eka means independent. There is somebody, he is the only one who is independent. The third meaning of Eka is unique. He is just one. There is nobody second to him. There is nobody similar to him. That is another meaning of Ekaha. And then there is another meaning that Yama talks about here. He is only one, but capable of infinite forms because he is omnipotent. He is capable of infinite forms because he is omnipotent. And this is one of the key arguments, as you know, to say why the Supreme Lord has a form. Some people say that Supreme Lord has no forms, and they are far from the truth. What they have forgotten is the basic dictum of Vedic philosophy, which is that our Brahman is not only Sarvajna, but he is also Sarvakarta. He is omnipotent. If you and I have a form, this supreme fellow is so omnipotent. Will he not have a form? What nonsense you are talking. That is the argument of Vedic philosophy to say that he is one, but he is capable of infinite forms. But all those infinite forms are the same Brahman or Krishna himself, and they are non-different from him. So that is also another meaning of Ekaha. And then, of course, you have the etymology of Ekaha is Yesha Eva Karoti Iti Ekaha. That means the one who does everything, Sarvakarta, Yesha Karoti. A and Ka, if you take those, it becomes Ekaha. So Eka there is an abbreviation of this understanding of this supreme being who is Esha Eva Karoti. So when our Guru Yama says Ekastata, if we just say Ekastata, that one being, no, Yama is asking us to think about so many other things about the Supreme Lord. And the question there is, who is this Eka of the Upanishad? Because this is a consistent theme of the Upanishads again, where the word Eka is used. Even in Gita, Eka is used in many places. So when you look at the word Eka, let's not just look at a numerical number one. It has got so many philosophical connotation in Vedic philosophy. So let us spend 2-3 minutes looking at the various Upanishads that give us these ideas. So here is the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, which is my favorite Upanishad of today. What does the Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6th Adhyaya 11th verse says? Eko Devaha Sarvabhuteshu Gudaha Sarvavyapi Sarvabhuta Antaraatma Karmadi Akshaha Sarvabhutadi Vasaha Sakshi Cheta Kevalo Nirgunashcha. This is an important verse of Shvetashvatara Upanishad that talks about Ekaha. This Supreme Lord is one. There is only one Supreme Lord. He's got so many of these attributes. They're all non-material attributes. They're all transempirical attributes. Okay, so there are some schools of Vedantic thought which take this particular verse as describing Nirguna Brahman. Unfortunately, they are not reading these verses properly. If only they had gone and read the previous lines, it has given so many attributes of the Brahman. And finally, it says Nirgunashta. So when that word Nirgunashta comes there, you understand that Nirguna there means that he does not have material gunas, but he has all sorts of non-material gunas. What are they? He is Devaha. He is Sarvabhuteshu Gudaha. He is a Sarvavyapi. He is a Sarvabhutantaratma. He is Karmadi Akshaha. He is Sarvabhutadi Vasaha. He is the Sakshi, directly looks at everything in his creation. He is the supreme consciousness, Chetaha. Kevala, he is independent. So there are so many qualities that are being said. And then Nirguna. So Eka of Shvetashvatara Upanishad becomes very good. Look at Rig Veda. Indram, Mitram, Varunam, Agnim, Ahuhu, Divyahi, Sa Suparno, Gurutman, Ekam Sat, Vipra, Bahuda Vadanti, Agnim, Yamam, Matarishwanam, Ahuhu. So again, Ekam, he is Ekam. Look at Chandogya Upanishad. Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asid, Ekam, Eva, Advitiyam. Ekam again there in this Upanishad in Chandogya. So who is this Advitiyam? Advitiyam means, does not mean nothing else exists and only him exists, all others are illusion. No. Advitiyam means, again Shvetashvatara Upanishad gives us an answer there. Natat samascha abhi adhikashcha drishyate. So Advitiyam there means there is nobody who is equal to him or nobody who is superior to him. That is what Upanishads are talking this. And I can't understand how some friends can think about only he is real, all else are unreal. Yeah, good luck to them, because Svetashvara Upanishad, which is Aparushya Veda, that itself is giving an explanation of what Advitiyam means. Natat samashta abhi adhikashta drishyate. Look at Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Salila eko drashta advaito bhavati, and it goes on. Again ekaha. Look at Nasadiya Suktaha. Anidavatam swadaya tad ekam. Tasmadan anya naparakinchanasa. The famous Nasadiya Sukta of pre-creation. And then he says, he is called Ekam because before creation, he was the only independent, unique being that was there. Okay. Aitareya Upanishad. Atmava idam eka eva agra asid. He was the only one who was there before. Okay. So what I'm trying to convey the message here is, when Yama says ekaha, it means so many things. We can't just take one there. So that eka is a name of Paramatma. Eka. Ekaha tata. That eka namaka Paramatma, what does he do? Sarva Bhuta Antara Atma. He is inside every Bhutas. Okay. Ekaha Sarva Bhuta Antara Atma. He is your Antaryamin and he is my Antaryamin. He is inside everybody. So look at that very, very clean, direct verse. So that is what he has said here, that this Eka, similar as how that Agni Devata is one who is in various forms of the fire, similarly this Ekanamaka Paramatma is also in every Atmas, Sarva Bhuta Antara Atma. And how is he there? Rupam Prati. For every form of the Jiva, there is a unique form of this Antaryamin. This is a very, very key concept of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So again, I have an IT issue. Some of my slides are not coming up, but that's fine. So Rupam Prati Rupo Bahishta. So that is, think about this key concept of Vedic Rishi, that for there are infinite jivas. Each jiva has got its own swabhava or form. And the Rishi is saying, for every form of the jiva, there is a form of the Supreme that controls it. So Rupam Prati, that is for every form of the Jiva, there is a form of the Lord. Okay? Rupo. But then he uses a very, very important word called Bahishta. Okay? Bahishta means, although he is inside as the Antaryamin, he is entirely different. Bahishta means he is outside. He is not similar to the Jiva. He is entirely different. Again, the language is extremely clear. So there are infinite Jivas, each unique and uncreated. God, although one, takes infinite forms and resides as a unique Antaryamin in each Jiva. So this is interesting because if you compare it with the Catholic view, so if you go to the Bible, Genesis 1:27, that says God created man as his image. Okay, so the Vedic philosophy has a different view. And the Vedic philosophy would say, God did not create man as his image. It is just that the souls are always there, and in each soul, God exists as a unique form as per the form of the jivas. The problem there for the Catholic philosophers there is, if God is goodness himself, and if God created man as his image, then the question is, how can he create souls that are pure evil? This is the philosophical problem. And there is a philosophical problem of partiality and cruelty that that is unresolved in Catholicism. So I just hope that you find this interesting of comparing and contrasting. What is the view of the Vedic Rishis? What are the other views? Okay. Now, similarly, look at Gita. We know this verse, right? Aham Vaishwanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Prana Apana Samayuktaha Pachami Annam Chaturvidam. Vaishwanaraha. Again, it is an Agni, right? Aham Vaishwanaraha. I am in the fire. But then we have also learned that Vaishwanaraha is a very, very amazing, complicated word. You can also split that into Aham Vai Shwa Naraha. Shwa means the dog. Nara means the human. So I am also in the dog. I am also in the Nara, which means I am in the Jiva, which is in the dog. I am also within this human body where there is the Jiva. Okay. So those are all the ideas. And again, this word Bahishta is very, very important. I had a couple of very important verses from the Upanishads. That is fine. But that Bahishta, as we have discussed a million times, that is a very important word. Although this Brahman as is an Antaryamin in each Jivas, he is unique and he is outside the Jivas, which means that he is different from the Jivas. These are all clear statements of Kata Upanishad. So why is Yama saying all this? Because as I said, the whole of the Upanishads is Samanvaya. They talk about the same thing. So there is a very, very important verse in the Rig Veda which also says exactly the same. Rupam rupam pratirupo babuvaha tadasya rupam prati chakshanaya indro mayabihi purarupayate yukta hi asya harayaha shatadasha. So what this Rig Veda mantra says, which is a foundational mantra for some schools of Vedantic darshanas, where it says is Rupam Rupam Prati. For every form of the Jivas, Rupo Babuvaha. There is a form of the Supreme Lord as the Jiva's Antaryaman. What does this Jiva needs to do? Tad Asya Rupam Prati Jiva Chakshanaya. Your philosophical journey and your spiritual journey should be that each Jiva Prati Chakshanaya should be able to see that unique form of the Lord that is inside you as your Antaryamin. That is your spiritual journey. So this is a key verse describing that. Rupam Rupam Pratirupo Babuvaha Tadasya Rupam Prati Chakshanaya. And then it goes on to celebrate this Supreme as Indra, because he is, of course, the Lord of everyone. Indro Maya Bihi. There Maya means he is Mahima, not an illusion. That is not the meaning there. We have done this. Maya has got 6 different meanings. Here it means God's supreme power. Yeah. Indro Maya Bihi Purarupayate. Because of his great capacity, he takes different rupas in different puras. Yeah, Pururupa iyate. He takes, what are the puras? Jiva is a thing in which the Antaryamin is. So in each Jiva, he takes, by his great omnipotence, he takes different shapes and forms. And what are those? Shata Dasha. There can be infinite forms. Hasya hi asya harayaha shatadasha. So this concept of bimba pratibimba then becomes important here. So what is that bimba and pratibimba here? This rupam prati, each jiva with its own form is the pratibimba. Whereas the antaryamin who is inside each jiva is the bimba. Okay. So there the idea is, it is about dependence. This object and the reflection. The reflection is always dependent on the object. So that is the metaphor there. Yeah, for this particular Rig Veda mantra, that is the metaphor. Unfortunately, some folks have taken that this mirror is material. Once the mirror is broken, the image is gone. So all that remains is the object alone. That is not the purpose of this Rig Veda mantra at all. The purpose of the Rig Veda mantra is to bring home the truth that this image or the pratibimba, which is the jiva, is always dependent on the object. If the object is not there, the image is not there. The object is similar to the image, and that there is always a eternal relationship between the object and the image. So, yeah, and there is a very beautiful verse of Gita chapter 2:18 that talks about it. So who wants to recite this, please? The very important verse 2:18. Who wants to take this? Neetaji, you want to go for it?
Yeah. Okay. Antavanta ime deha nitya sokta sharirinaha anashino prameyasya tasmad yuddhasva bharata.
Beautiful, Neetaji. Thank you. So this is a very, very important verse of chapter 2, 18th verse, that actually talks about this particular verse of Rig Veda and talks about the Bimba Pratibimba relationship between the super soul and the Jiva. So it talks about this verse goes to the core philosophy of why is the Jiva eternal? The Jiva eternal, why is the question? Why should the Jiva be eternal? Why can't the Jiva be destroyed? Yeah. So the answer is given in this verse. So situations where reflection cannot exist. What are the situations? Object does not exist, or the reflecting medium does not exist. Those are all the situations. But the object is not, or the object is not in contact with the reflecting medium. Yeah. So think about this word. Those are all the situations where the image does not exist. But in this verse, Krishna says, God or the object of Bimba is eternal. Jiva, image, Pratibimba is eternal. Why? The reflecting medium is the soul itself, and this object that is there everywhere. So there is no place where this object is not reflected on the image. Okay, it's a complicated verse. Think about this verse, but the idea there is for me to link 2:18 to Rig Veda 6th mandala. Now, Narayana Panditacharya, he's one of the great philosophers, who is the exemplar biographer of Srimad Acharya. In the 8th Sarga, 41st verse, he has done a verse which reminds us of all this. What does he say? Paramatmane, Satatam, Yekarupine, Dasharupine, Shata, Sahasra Rupine, Avikarine, Sputam, Anantarupine, Sukachit, Samasta, Tanave Namo Namaha. He says, you got infinite forms made, you're one, you're only one, but you got infinite forms, which could be Krishna, Rama, Narayana, whatever, Vyuha forms, Avatara forms, and also as Bimbarupa Paramatma in all the Jivas. Okay, so I hope that gives you an idea as to where is it that Yama is taking us with regards to the contemplation of the symbols of Brahman. He started off with the fire and said, and then from the fire, he directly has gone into the Antaryaman. And now what he does is he talks about the wind. As I said, when you get out of your room, when you breathe air, think about the Vayu there, the wind. Wind is the most important symbol, pratika of Brahman in the atmosphere. Why? Vayu rata ekaha bhuvanam pravishtaha rupam prati rupo babuvaha ekastata sarvabhutantaratma rupam prati rupo bahishta. Okay, so the lines are very similar, so I don't have to spend a lot of time talking about ekastata sarvabhutantaratma rupam prati rupo bahishta. All that I would say is the Vayu, the basics. Okay, there are a lot of Vayus in Vedic philosophy, yeah, and there are 49 Maruts, and then there is the Mukhya Prana or the Mukhya Vayu. So in total there are 50. So read about this. And in this slide, I've actually summarized the 49 Maruts: Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana, Upapranas, Naga, Kurma, Krikala, Devadatta, Dhananjaya, and then there are so many others. Okay. There are 10 important Vayus in Pindanda and the rest in 39 in Brahmanda. We don't have time to go through all this, but we need to understand when Yama says Vayu Rata Ekaha, what Vayu is he talking about? And that is where I am getting at, because these are 47 guys, and there is another guy called Ahankarika Vayu, who is the 9th rank in the Vedic pantheon. And then there is the Pravaha Vayu, who is the 11th rank. So when you are in the airplane and when you see all this atmosphere above the clouds, the Vedic view that is all under the control of Pravaha Vayu. Okay, the wind that blows is Pravaha Vayu, not the Mukhya Prana. Of course, the Mukhya Prana is inside the Pravaha Vayu, but it is the Pravaha Vayu that is being discussed here, or the 11th rank. The atmospheric wind that blows everywhere. So don't confuse that Pravaha Vayu with the Mukhya Vayu. Mukhya Vayu is this one, but there are 49 other entities, 10 plus 39. So the Vedic philosophy of Vayu is incredible. And it is described in the whole of the Rig Veda. There are lots of suktas celebrating maruts of various types. So anybody interested can look it up. So again, there is a print error here. So what I had here was various types of winds. You know, the wind from the fan, the wind from a storm, the wind that you will have when you're driving a car and so on. So the philosopher there, what he says is, there are various types, forms of wind, material wind, but there is only one Pravaha Vayu who is inside all this and controls this. Similarly, there is this Ekastata Sarva Bhutantaratma Rupam Prati Rupo Bahishta. Okay, so that is the idea there. So now, okay, the verses are appearing, so that's good. So that is the idea there. Ekastata Sarva Bhutantaratma Rupam Prati Rupo Bahishta. So this is the idea here. You remember the Narayana Sukta of Yajur Veda, which we have recited several months ago. Antar Bahishta Tat Sarvam Vyapya Narayana Stitaha. Who is this Narayana? Antaha. He is inside everything and inside you as your Antaryamin. And he is also Bahishta. Bahishta means he is also outside his creation, by which I mean he is entirely different from his creation. Antar Bahishta Tat Sarvam Vyapya Narayana Stitaha. Okay. So now is the third verse, which should be interesting and more easy for us to handle. Now what Yama says is, look, there is a third image of the Supreme, or the Pratika of Supreme, that you can worship. What is that? When you look up in the sky, you see the sun every day in the morning. So sun is the most important symbol of Pratika of Brahman beyond earth. Suryo yata sarva lokasya chakshuhu nalipyate chakshushair bahya doshaihi ekastata sarva bhutantaratma nalipyate loka dukkena bahyaha. It's a very, very interesting verse. So what is it saying? Surya is our Surya Devata. And who is Surya Devata? Of course, he is in the sun. And there is a quick quiz here. What is the rank? What is the Vedic rank for Surya Devata? Who is going to answer this? So, quick question.
8th.
8th is Indra.
12th.
Excellent. Yes, Pratibhaji, thank you. So, Surya is the 12th rank of the Vedic pantheon. So, Surya, he talks about Surya. Okay, the Surya is only one. There is only one Surya. He is inside the sun, but the Surya is also Abhimani Devata of the eyes. So when he says Chakshuhu, that's what it means, the eyes. Each one of us has got two eyes. And imagine how many human beings and how many animals are there, how many eyes are there. And in all these so many eyes, Suryaha yata sarva lokasya chakshuhu. So in whole of this world, lokasya means what? All the living beings on earth and elsewhere. That sun is only one, and he is the Abhimani Devata of the eyes. And here is a bit of ophthalmology that Yama is saying. Nalipyate chakshushair bahya doshaihi. So he says, although the Surya Devata is inside all these eyes, the diseases, the material diseases of the eyes do not affect the Surya Devata. Na lipyate. Lipyate means it doesn't stick to him, it doesn't affect him. Chakshushair bahya dohaihi. It might be what? Cataract, it could be whatever else disease that you can think of. I just took some Google images of various eye diseases that I learned when I was in the medical school. So Yama is saying there are various types of eye diseases, but Surya, who is a Devata, who is inside all these eyes, he is not affected by it. He does not suffer. He does not suffer the dukkha. We as Jiva might be, but the Surya Devata doesn't. Ekastata sarva bhuta antara atma na lipyate loka dukkena bahyaha. So here is an important philosophical thing that Yama is telling us. Similarly, in all the jivas, there is this sarva bhuta antara atma. But how does he operate? Na lipyate loka dukkena bahyaha. The jivas may go through samsara and may have endless suffering. But this chap who is sitting there inside the jiva's antaryamin, he doesn't get affected by it at all. Yeah, and we have done this before. As you know, this our famous Mundaka Upanishad, Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakaya Samana Vriksham Parishashvajate Tayor Anyaha, this Anyaha Pippalam Swadati Anashnan Anyaha Abhichakashiti. So this fellow is eating the fruits and things that he is enjoying, but actually is suffering in samsara. Whereas this guy, this Brahman bird, is looking at it. This is an Anyaha, a different one. He is looking at it. He is not affected by it. He is not attached to it. That is what it means. That na lipyate, this Antaryamin is a silent witness. He just sees what this jiva is doing, takes accounts of what he does, but he is not affected by it. Similar idea that is described in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which you should go and have a look of the conversation between Yajnavalkya and Uddalaka, where he says, Asango hi evam purushaha, asangaha. This Purusha is asangaha. He is not affected by anything that happens to the jivas or anything that happens in the material world. He is not affected by it at all. But we are affected by it, which is what Krishna has said. We are going through suffering. Why? So who wants to recite 214, 262 and 510? All three, please. Who wants to go for it? They are beautiful verses before we close. Silence.
Oh, I can do it if no one else is there.
Yeah, Neetaji, go for it. Yes.
Yeah. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkadaha agama payino nityaha tam titikshasva bharata dhyayato vishayan punsa sangasteshu upajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bhijayate क्रोधाद् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति ब्रह्मण्याधाय कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा करोति यः लिप्यते न स पापेन पद्मपत्रमिवाम्भसा.
Beautiful, Neetaji, and look at the similarities of what our Yama is saying here. Na lipyate loka dukkena bahyaha. To the Brahman, it does not. And for us, when will we reach that point? Lipyate nasapapena, like Padma Patram iva ambasi, when Sangam Tyaktva, when we give up our attachment. And Krishna has said so many psychological aspects here. And then in this, there is this Kaku Swara, isn't it? So who is going to tell us what is Kaku Swara? How should we recite 214 in the Kaku Swara, which is the right way of reciting this particular verse? So who is going to tell me about Kaku Swara? Another small
question.
Excellent. Yeah, Sushrut, that's right. So that is what Krishna says in 214. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukadakudaha. No, agama payino anityaha tam titikshasva bharat. So that is how that conversation is happening between Krishna and Arjuna there. He says, is it just the contact between the sense objects and the sense organs that is responsible for suffering and happiness? No, it is the attachment. This concept of ahankara and mamakara that comes here, that is what is responsible for the suffering. Yeah, think about that particular verse. It's a very important verse. So the ahankara and mahamakara that we have, that is the root cause of our suffering. But then Yama here says, for the Supreme Being, he is asango hi evam purushaha. So nalipyate loka dukkhena. And he is bahyaha, because he is trans-empirical, he is beyond the jivas and the material world. So the last slide for today, I'm really pleased I'm finishing it on time. So if you remember in the Kata Upanishad first Adhyaya, we did this. So again, when we do Upanishad, we should always go back and forth and look at internal evidence and see how Yama is, making this plot thicker and thicker. So what did he say before? Nachiketa trayametad viditva ye evam vidwan chinute nachiketam ya ishtakaha yavatirva yatava. And then in that we said the Trinachiketa Agni. What is that? Padya, Gadya, Gana, Tapaha, Dana, Yajnaha, morning, afternoon, evening. three timelines, three gunas, Srishti, Sthiti, Samhara. There are so many threes that we have discussed. Okay, the same three comes back here. Antariksha, Vayu and Agni, the three aspects of worship of the Supreme. So when I look at Aditya, one way I can contemplate from what Yama has said, na lipyate loka dukkena, and he says, this guy is nirdosha. This Supreme Brahman, he is not affected by anything. He has no defects. So that is another idea that should come to our mind, that this Brahman, Krishna, Vishnu is nirdosha. And when I contemplate him as in the Vayu, I cannot see this Vayu, but still I can experience this by our touch sensation, by our sensation of touch. We know that there is wind. We can't see it. Similarly, this Brahman is inside you. You may not be able to see him now, but at some point you will experience him. Okay? And Agni, this being is pure. He is Jnanamaya. And all the other meanings of Agni that we touched upon should come into this contemplation. Nirdoshatva, Sukshmatva, Jnanamayatva. So those are all some of the attributes of the Supreme that we can understand. And that is exactly what Dyau, Antariksha and Prithvi. That is Swaha, Bhuvaha and Bu. Bhur, Bhuvas, Suvaha. When I say Om, that is Akara, Ukara and Makara. And when you are doing Sandhya Vandana, you may say Om Achyutaya Namaha, Om Anantaya Namaha, Om Govindaya Namaha. Those three are symbolic of this. And here is another formula that our Rishis have given, but still we don't do it. And our Rishi says, even if you can't think about these Vedic mantras, when you wake up in the morning, just look at your stupid face. Look at in the mirror and look at your face. You got the eyes, you got the nose, you got the mouth. Mouth is where the speech is. Agni is the devata of the speech. Your nose is where the air goes in. Pravaha Vayu is there. And your eyes is where the sun is, where Surya is there. So look at that. Agni, Vayu and Antariksha. So even on your face, it is the same contemplation. So this is the beauty of the Vedic philosophy. When you look at Brahmanda, you immediately come to Pindanda and do that contemplation of Agni and Vayu and Aditya. Okay, so that is the approach that Yama is taking. And now what we will do in the next session is, we got some amazing verses coming up. Eko vashi sarva bhuta antaratma ekam rupam bahuda yakkaroti tam atmastam ye anupashyanti dhiraha tesham sukam shashvatim na itaresham. Then you have another famous verse. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman tam atmastam ye anupashyanti dhiraha tesham shantihi shashvatihi na itaresham. Okay, so those are all some of the beautiful verses. So we will continue in the next class. So on that note, I am going to close today's session, and I hope you were able to grasp some of the ideas of the Vedic philosophy and the views of the Rishis of pratikas of Brahman in Brahmanda and Pindanda, and that how fire is the most important pratika on earth, which is Tejas, whereas the ones made of Prithvi becomes more practical. We can't do fire sacrifice every day, can we? But more important is to worship this Krishna who is right in front of us on this slide. And this one is made of Prithvi, and we can worship that. But ultimately, the Rishi's view is Agni should be the highest form of worship on earth. And then Vayu in the atmosphere and Surya. But these three should not be worshipped as the same as Brahman. No. He has clearly said Sarva Bhuta Antara Atma. Every time in this verse, he says Sarva Bhuta Antara Atma Bahishta. He is different, but he is inside. So that is how you should worship him, is the overwhelming advice of Yama. And that is the reason why Veda Vyasa has said, Na pratike nahi saha. Be careful when you do worship as to how you worship it. So I hope this was useful. So I'm going to close my session.